welcome back to Whispers in the Dark. Turn the lights down, put on your headphones, and imagine the sound of dripping water somewhere far beneath your feet. Imagine a tunnel so deep that the air forgets the sun, a place where your voice comes back to you changed, and every step forward feels like a mistake you have already made. This is the story of a group of tourists who followed a guide into one of the most famous caves in the country and discovered that some tour do not end when the lights go out. Now let's begin. No one in the town of Mornstead ever called the cave by its real name. On brochures, postcards, highway signs, and the polished wooden board outside the visitor center, it was called St. Oran's Cavern, named for some dead monk who had supposedly hidden there during a war 300 years earlier. The name sounded gentle, almost holy. It sounded like candlelight and prayer. It sounded like the sort of place where families might take photographs, where children might buy plastic helmets from the gift shop, where retired couples might hold hands as they admired glittering minerals under soft electric lamps. But the locals called it the Throat. They did not say it loudly. They did not say it to visitors. The name was passed from bartender to mechanic, from grandmother to child, from ranger to ranger in the break room behind the visitor center, where the fluorescent lights hummed and the vending machine swallowed coins. The Throat was not a joke. It was not a campfire story, not exactly. It was a warning disguised as superstition, and like most warnings, it had become thin with age. St. Oran's Cavern sat in the limestone hills north of Mornstead, where the road climbed through black pine forest and ended at a wide gravel lot carved into the mountainside. The entrance to the cave was a huge arched mouth in the rock, sealed during closing hours by an iron gate. Above it, the mountain leaned forward like a listening animal. Ferns grew from cracks in the stone. Water slid constantly down the face of the cliff in silver threads, collecting in dark puddles that never dried, not even in the hottest summers. Every year, tens of thousands of tourists came to see the cavern. They came for the cathedral chamber, where stalactites hung like organ pipes from a ceiling too high for the lamps to reach. They came for the glass river, a shallow stream so clear it looked like air poured over stone. They came for the famous guide who had become part of the attraction, a man whose smiling face appeared on the website, on travel blogs, and in reviews that always said the same things. Ask for Victor, best guide we ever had. Funny, charming, knows everything. Somehow made the cave feel alive. Victor Hale was waiting by the gate on the morning the Archer tour arrived. He stood under the dripping cliff in a dark green guide uniform, his silver hair combed neatly back from a high forehead, his posture relaxed and elegant. He was perhaps 60, though the first strange thing about him was that no one ever agreed on his age. Some said he looked 45 in the right light. Others said his eyes belonged to someone ancient. He was tall and lean, with long hands and a smile that seemed both welcoming and private, as if he had been expecting each person individually. The 11 o'clock tour gathered around him in the cool mist. There were 12 visitors. Maya Ellison came first, carrying a small black camera she had promised herself she would actually use. She was 29, a school teacher from Bristol, with tired eyes, curly brown hair tied loosely at the back of her neck, and a habit of smiling even when she did not mean it. She had come alone after the sudden ending of an engagement she had not admitted was unhappy, until the ring was already back in its box. She had booked the cave tour because it was cheap, scenic, and far enough from home that no one would ask if she was all right. Beside her stood Daniel Pike, a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, wearing a waterproof jacket that looked more expensive than everyone else's combined. He had the compact build of someone who had once been athletic and was now merely angry about aging. His wife, Serena, stood half a step behind him, elegant and pale, with a silk scarf tucked into her coat despite the damp. Their 12-year-old son, Oliver, leaned against the railing with earbuds in and one shoelace untied, pretending not to listen to anything. 2 university students, Kara and Josh, were taking selfies near the entrance sign. Kara had dyed red hair, heavy black boots, and a silver ring in her nose. Josh was thin and nervous, with glasses that kept slipping down and a laugh that arrived too quickly. They had been together 6 months, long enough to have private jokes, but not long enough to survive being truly afraid together. Harold Finch came next, a retired police inspector with white stubble and a stiff left knee. He walked with a cane he hated needing. He was accompanied by his sister, Ruth, a small woman in a lavender raincoat who carried peppermints, tissues, painkillers, and every emergency item Harold had mocked until the morning he forgot his own inhaler, and she produced a spare. There was also Father Brendan Cole, though he was not dressed like a priest. He wore a gray sweater, hiking trousers, and a black coat with frayed cuffs. He had once served a parish not far from Mornstead. Now, he moved quietly through the world with the careful humility of a man who had lost his faith, but not the habits it had built in him. Finally, there were the Martins, a cheerful American couple named Paul and Linda, both in their late 50s, both wearing matching blue rain jackets. Linda was round-faced and bright-eyed, the sort of person who talked to strangers in queues. Paul had a white beard trimmed close to his jaw and carried a large backpack full of bottled water, snacks, and unnecessary equipment. At 11 precisely, Victor clapped his hands once. The sound snapped sharply off the cliff and died at the gate. "Good morning, everyone," he said. His voice was warm and deep, the kind of voice that made people lean in without knowing why. "Welcome to St. Iran's Cavern. My name is Victor Hale, and I will be your guide today." He looked at each of them in turn as he spoke, and when his eyes met Maya's, she had the unsettling impression that he recognized her. "This cave," Victor continued, "has been forming for millions of years. Rainwater seeps through the soil above us, takes the acid from rotting leaves and roots, and slowly eats away at the limestone. Drop by drop, inch by inch. Patience is the first rule of the underground. Oliver snorted quietly. Victor smiled without turning his head. That is also why we ask younger guests not to test whether the barriers can hold their weight. They can. Usually. Oliver took his elbow off the railing. A few people laughed. Daniel did not. Before we enter, Victor said, a few simple rules. Stay on the path. Do not touch the formations. They are older than civilization and more fragile than they look. Keep your helmets on once we are inside. If the lights flicker, do not panic. There are backup systems. If you feel unwell, tell me immediately. And most importantly, do not wander. He paused. The dripping water seemed louder. St. Oran's cavern is mapped, he said, but not completely understood. There are old natural passages branching from the public route. Some are sealed. Some are too narrow for safe entry. Some are very easy to miss until you have already stepped inside them. We prefer not to lose anyone before lunch. Again, laughter rose, lighter this time. Maya did not laugh. She was watching Victor's hands. They rested at his sides, fingers slightly curled, motionless. His nails were clean and neatly trimmed, but there was something pale beneath them, a chalky residue that looked like powdered bone. A ranger unlocked the gate. The hinges groaned, and a breath came out of the cave. Cold air rolled over them. It smelled of wet stone, minerals, old pennies, and something faintly organic, like cloth left too long in a cellar. Helmets on, Victor said. They filed through the gate, one by one, crossing from the gray daylight into the yellow glow of the entrance tunnel. Maya looked back once before the passage curved. The parking lot was bright beyond the iron bars. She saw a family getting out of a car, a little girl in pink boots jumping into puddles. Then the curve swallowed the entrance, and the world above vanished. The first part of the tour was beautiful. The path descended gently through a corridor where the walls folded in ribbons of cream and rust. Electric lights were tucked discreetly behind rocks, illuminating the mineral flow so it shimmered like melted wax. Water clicked and tapped everywhere, dripping from pointed stone teeth overhead into black pools below the walkway. Victor moved with practiced ease, never seeming to watch his footing, though the path was slick. He told them how the cave had been discovered in 1891 by a shepherd chasing a lost sheep, how the first explorers had used candles and rope, how one chamber had been used during the war to store medical supplies. His stories were polished, charming, and faintly theatrical. He learned names quickly, too quickly. So Maya, he said, as they stopped at a cluster of thin white stalactites called the Angel's Comb. As a teacher, you will appreciate this. Every one of these formations is a lesson in patience. Maya blinked. She did not remember telling him what she did. She glanced around. Perhaps she had mentioned it near the gate. Perhaps he had overheard. That had to be it. Victor pointed upward. A stalactite grows down from the ceiling. A stalagmite grows up from the floor. Remember it this way. Stalactite holds tight to the ceiling. Stalagmite might reach it one day. My class uses that, Maya said before she could stop herself. Yes, Victor said. Year 6, if I am not mistaken. Maya's mouth went dry. She had taught Year 6 for 3 years. The others were looking at the formations, not at her. Only Harold seemed to notice her expression. His pale eyes narrowed. The tour moved on. At the glass river, Victor crouched and dipped 2 fingers near the water without touching it. This stream runs for nearly 7 miles underground before joining the Mornstead River, he said. It is very pure, very cold, and in places very deep. Can you drink it? Asked Linda. You can, Victor said, though I would not. Why not? He smiled. Some things are clearer before they enter you. Linda laughed uncertainly. Paul squeezed her shoulder. They crossed a narrow bridge over the stream. The water below was so transparent that Maya could see every stone on the bottom, every pale thread of mineral, every tiny blind creature darting through the current like a living comma. Then her light struck something else. A face. She stopped so abruptly that Josh bumped into her. Sorry, he said. Maya gripped the railing. The face had been under the water, looking up. Not a body, not even a skull. Just a face pale as wet paper, eyes open, hair drifting around it in slow black strands. It had appeared between 2 stones, mouth parted as if trying to speak through the current. Maya stared. The water moved. The face became a patch of limestone. You all right? Josh asked. Yes, Maya whispered. Victor stood at the far end of the bridge, watching her. His smile was gone. In the cathedral chamber, the cave widened into an impossible space. The ceiling vanished into darkness above rows of hanging stone. The floor dropped away beyond the railing into a lower cavern filled with mist. Their voices became enormous, then returned in fragments. Beautiful, Serena whispered. Victor lifted one hand. This chamber is the heart of the public route. We are now nearly 300 feet below the surface. The temperature remains constant year-round. The darkness here, if we were to turn off the lights, would be absolute. Please don't, Ruth said. Victor chuckled. Not yet. Harold looked sharply at him. The guide turned toward the group. His eyes moved over them like a hand passing over covered furniture. Many visitors find that caves awaken memory, he said. Something about being below the earth. Something about silence and pressure. We carry things down here with us. Grief, guilt, secrets. The cave has a way of making them feel heavier. That part on the website, Daniel asked. His tone was flat. No, Victor said. That part is free. Daniel's jaw tightened. Victor looked at him kindly. Are you uncomfortable, Mr. Pike? Daniel stared. You know my name. It was on the booking. Serena booked it. Of course. Daniel folded his arms. Then ask her if I'm uncomfortable. Serena looked at the floor. Victor's smile returned, small and terrible. I would, but she has spent enough years answering for you. The chamber went silent, except for dripping water. Daniel stepped forward. What did you say? Dan, Serena whispered. Victor spread his hands. Only that the cave is honest. It tends to say what everyone else avoids. Maya felt the air change. It was still cold, but now there was a pressure to it, a closeness, as if the walls had leaned inward. Oliver pulled out one earbud. Can we just keep going? Yes, Victor said. Let us keep going. They followed a passage called the Pilgrim's Walk, marked by a green exit sign fixed to the wall at every bend. The signs were reassuring in their ordinariness. White arrows, running figures, metal screws, proof that bureaucracy and electricity could tame even the ancient dark. Victor talked less now. The path became steeper. The ceiling lowered. The cave walls turned darker, streaked with black mineral veins that looked like old smoke trapped in stone. Maya began to hear something beneath the ordinary cave sounds. A murmur. At first she thought it was the group, their footsteps and breathing overlapping. Then she dropped behind slightly, pretending to adjust her camera, and listened. The murmur continued. It came from the walls. Not words, not exactly, more like many people speaking through closed mouths. Maya hurried to catch up. At the next viewing platform, Victor stopped beside a formation shaped like a robed figure. Its head bent forward. Its stone hands seemed clasped at its chest. This is called the Watcher, Victor said. Father Brendan crossed himself without seeming to realize he had done it. Victor noticed, old habit. Brendan lowered his hand. Apparently, you served at St. Michael's, Victor said, before the fire. Brendan went very still. No one moved. Victor tilted his head. A tragic night. Brendan's face lost color. How do you know that? Victor's expression was almost tender. You still smell the smoke sometimes, do you not? Even in clean rooms, even after rain. Brendan took one step backward. His heel struck the low barrier. Ruth reached for him. Father. I am not a priest, he said, his voice cracked. Not anymore. No, Victor agreed. Not anymore. Then the lights went out. The darkness fell so completely that it felt physical. It did not arrive like the absence of light. It arrived like a substance poured over their heads, thick and cold, sealing their eyes open. Someone screamed. Maya did not know who. The sound was too close and too far at once. A hand struck her shoulder. Another body slammed into the railing. The metal groaned. Oliver shouted for his mother. Serena called his name. Daniel swore. Linda began praying in a thin, panicked whisper. Paul kept saying, I have a torch, I have a torch, but the words dissolved into the black. Maya raised her own hands in front of her face. Nothing, not even the pale blur of skin. A laugh came from somewhere ahead. "Victor, stay calm," he said. His voice was not loud, but it reached everyone. "Emergency lights will come on in a moment. Do not move." "Turn them on now," Daniel barked. "Do not move," Victor repeated. Then something brushed Maya's ear. It was not a hand. It was not hair. It was damp and soft and cold like a tongue. She clapped her palm over her ear and gasped. The murmur inside the walls grew louder. This time it formed words. "Maya." She froze. Maya Ellison. The voice was her mother. Her mother had been dead for 4 years. "Sweetheart, why did you say yes when you knew you wanted to run?" Maya squeezed her eyes shut, which made no difference in the dark. All around her, others began reacting to things only they could hear. "No," Serena sobbed. "No, please." "Shut up," Daniel snarled. "Shut up." Josh whispered, "Mum." Kara said, "Who is that? Who is saying that?" Harold's cane struck the floor again and again, a steady tap that became frantic. Nobody answer. Nobody talk to it. Father Brendan was breathing hard. Between breaths, he muttered Latin words that sounded fragile and useless. The darkness pressed closer. Then came a wet, dragging sound. Something moved along the walkway. Not footsteps. A body being pulled. Linda screamed, "Paul." The dragging stopped. "Paul." "I'm here," Paul said from her left, terrified. But the darkness answered from her right, in Paul's exact voice. "I'm here." Linda screamed again. A hand grabbed Maya's wrist. She nearly shrieked before Ruth whispered, "It is me, love. Stay still." Maya held onto the older woman in the dark. For 10 seconds, or 10 minutes, or an hour, there was nothing but fear, breath, dripping water, and the voices in the walls calling everyone by name. Then the emergency lights came on. They were not the warm yellow lamps from before. They were dim red bulbs set low along the path, bathing the cave in a color like fresh blood. Shadows jumped and shivered across the stone. Faces appeared one by one, pale and stunned beneath helmet straps. Maya counted without meaning to. Serena, Oliver, Daniel, Kara, Josh, Harold, Ruth, Father Brendan, Linda, Paul. 10 tourists. No Victor. "Where is he?" Daniel demanded. No one answered. The guide had vanished. His helmet lay on the path beside the watcher formation. The chin strap had been cut clean through. Beside it, on the wet stone floor, was his name badge. Victor Hale. The plastic badge was cracked down the middle. "Did he go for help?" Linda asked. Harold crouched with difficulty and picked up the badge. He turned it over. His old policeman's eyes moved across the floor, the railing, the walls. "No," he said. "What do you mean, no?" Daniel snapped. Harold pointed. On the damp path beyond the helmet, there were tracks in the mineral silt. Victor's boot prints went forward, away from the group, but after 6 steps, they changed. The prints became longer. The heel disappeared. The toes spread into thin grooves like fingers. Then they climbed the wall. The marks continued up the stone, bending around the robed formation, and vanished into a narrow black crack near the ceiling. Oliver made a small sound. Serena pulled him against her. "This is a prank," Daniel said. "This is part of the tour." "No," Brendan said softly. "It is not." Daniel turned on him. "And you know that because you used to be a priest." Brendan did not look at him. He was staring at the watcher. The stone figure was different. Its head had been bent before. Now it faced them. Maya was certain of it. "Back," Harold said. "We go back the way we came. Slowly, together." "Yes," Paul said. "Yes, absolutely." They turned toward the passage they had come through. The green exit sign on the wall had changed. The arrow that had pointed back toward the entrance now pointed the other way. Deeper. No one spoke. Daniel strode to the sign and grabbed it with both hands. "This is ridiculous." He pulled. The sign did not move. He planted one foot against the wall and yanked harder. The metal edges cut his fingers. Blood ran over the white running figure. The sign stayed fixed, humming faintly, its arrow glowing green and steady. "Dan, stop," Serena said. Daniel hit the sign with his fist. Once, twice. The third time, the red emergency lights flickered. From somewhere in the passage ahead, Victor's voice drifted back to them. "Stay on the path." Daniel backed away. Nobody asked again whether it was part of the tour. They began walking back anyway, moving against the arrows. The passage should have taken 5 minutes. It did not. The pilgrim's walk twisted farther than before. The slope felt wrong. They had descended coming in, but going back they were descending again. The ceiling pressed lower. The air grew colder, damp enough to bead on their faces. Every green sign they passed pointed behind them, urging them onward into the depths. After 15 minutes, they reached the glass river, or what should have been the glass river. The bridge was gone. The stream was wider now, black under the red lights, moving slowly from wall to wall. The water no longer looked clear. It looked thick. Its surface bulged in places, as if something large moved just beneath. "This isn't right," Josh whispered. "No kidding," Kara said, but her voice shook. Paul swung his backpack around and pulled out a torch. He clicked it on. A strong white beam cut through the red gloom, striking the water. The light revealed faces, dozens of them beneath the surface. Men, women, children, all pale and pressed upward as if the water were glass. Their eyes were open. Their mouths moved soundlessly. Hair drifted around them like weeds. Some wore old-fashioned collars. Some wore modern jackets. Some had helmets from the visitor center. Linda made a choking sound. One face rose above the others. It was Victor. He smiled up from under the water, lips moving around words none of them could hear. Paul dropped the torch. It struck the path, rolled, and shone across the stream at a low angle. A hand burst out of the water. It was white, long-fingered, and jointed wrong. It slapped onto the stone edge with a sound like wet meat. Another hand followed, then another. For a moment, it seemed as if several bodies were climbing out at once, tangled together beneath the water. "Run," Harold said. They ran. Maya did not remember choosing to move. One instant, she was staring at the hands. The next, she was stumbling after Ruth, and Harold through a passage she did not recognize, with the group scattering around her and the red lights pulsing overhead like a heartbeat. Behind them came the sound of water spilling onto stone, and laughter, not Victor's laughter alone, many voices laughing with his mouth. They burst into a chamber filled with narrow columns from floor to ceiling. The formations were packed so tightly that the path threaded between them like a maze. Red light glowed through the stone in patches, turning the columns into shapes that resembled bodies pressed under skin. "Everyone here," Harold called. No one answered at first. They were panting too hard. Maya counted again. Serena and Oliver, Daniel, Kara and Josh, Harold and Ruth, Father Brendan, Linda, Paul. 10. Then Paul looked around. Linda. She had been beside him seconds earlier. Linda. His voice rose. The columns answered softly. Linda. Paul shoved between two formations. Linda. Harold grabbed his backpack. "Do not go off alone." Paul tore free. "That is my wife." He plunged into the columns. The red lights flickered. For one moment, they saw him moving between the stone shapes, his blue jacket bright in the gloom. Then the formations seemed to shift. Not move exactly, but rearrange in the way shadows rearrange when a candle gutters. Paul vanished behind a curtain of stone. "Paul," Maya called. His reply came muffled. "I see her." "Come back," Harold shouted. "I see her coat." Then Paul screamed. The scream rose high, broke, and turned into a wet gurgle. A heavy thump followed, then another, then something dragged across stone with slow, patient effort. Kara began crying. Josh wrapped both arms around her and stared into the columns, his mouth open. Daniel took Oliver by the shoulder. "Move." "We cannot leave him," Serena said. Daniel's grip tightened. "He is dead." "You do not know that." From between the columns came Paul's voice. "Linda." It was soft, confused. "Linda, where did you go?" Maya's scalp tightened. The voice was moving toward them, but it did not sound like Paul standing upright. It sounded low to the ground. Harold raised his cane as if it were a weapon. "Back away." Paul's face appeared between two columns. Only his face. It slid out sideways at ankle height, pale and slack, still attached to something hidden behind the rock. His eyes rolled toward them. His lips moved. "Linda," he whispered. Then fingers emerged around his head, too many fingers, pressing into his cheeks from behind. They pulled him back into the stone. His skull made a soft cracking sound as it disappeared. Ruth screamed. The group fled deeper because every other direction had become stone. They ran until their lungs burned. The path narrowed. The ceiling dipped so low they had to crouch. Oliver sobbed openly now. Serena held his hand and pulled him onward, while Daniel led with a fury that looked like courage until Maya saw his face. He was not brave. He was refusing to understand. They came to a fork. There had been no fork on the public tour. 2 tunnels opened before them. Above each was a green exit sign. Both arrows pointed downward. On the left tunnel wall, written in wet black mineral, were the words, "Serena knows." Serena stopped. Daniel saw it. His face changed. "What is that supposed to mean?" he said. "Dan," she whispered. "What does it mean?" Oliver looked between them, trembling. The letters began to run like fresh ink. New words formed beneath them. "Oliver is not yours." For a second, no, one moved. The cave seemed to hold its breath. Daniel turned slowly toward Serena. She covered her mouth. Oliver stared at the wall, as if the words were in a language he almost understood. "That is not true," Daniel said. Serena began to cry silently. Daniel stepped back from her. "That is not true." The wall answered in Victor's voice. "Is it?" Daniel lunged at the stone, scraping at the letters with his bleeding hands. "Shut up." The tunnel filled with whispers. Names, dates, rooms, arguments. The secret architecture of a marriage rotting from within. Serena grabbed Oliver and pulled him away. "We have to keep moving." Daniel turned on her, eyes wild. "Who? Not now. Who? Please. Who?" The last word echoed down both tunnels, multiplied and warped, until it sounded like a crowd chanting. Oliver broke free from his mother and ran into the right tunnel. "Oliver," Serena screamed. She ran after him. Daniel followed. Maya and the others had no choice but to chase them. The tunnel dipped sharply. The floor was slick with clay. Maya slipped once and struck her knee hard enough to send white pain up her thigh. Ruth hauled her up with surprising strength. Ahead, Oliver's cries bounced off the walls. Then there was a crash, a cracking sound. Serena screamed. The group rounded a bend and found the path ended at a vertical shaft. The red emergency lights continued down the wall, one every 10 feet, descending into darkness like the spine of some buried beast. Oliver clung to a protruding rock just below the edge. Serena lay on her stomach, gripping his wrist. Daniel stood behind her, frozen. "Help me," Serena screamed. Harold dropped to his knees beside her and reached down. Josh grabbed Harold's belt. Maya grabbed Josh. Brendan took Maya by the waist. Ruth held Brendan's coat. Daniel did not move. "Dan," Serena shrieked, "help your son." The cave whispered, "Not his son." Daniel's face twisted. Oliver looked up at him. "Dad," he sobbed. Whatever hatred, doubt, or wounded pride lived in Daniel. It broke for one instant under that word. He lunged forward and grabbed Serena's arm. Together, they pulled. Oliver rose inch by inch. Then something below him pulled back. His body jerked downward so violently that Serena nearly went over the edge. Oliver screamed, a raw animal sound. Maya leaned far enough to see into the shaft. A hand had closed around Oliver's ankle. It was long and gray and smooth, with nails like chips of limestone. Another hand reached from the dark, then another. They were not attached to visible bodies. They emerged from holes in the shaft wall, arms stretching impossibly, joint after joint, unfolding from the stone. Oliver kicked. His shoe came off and fell into the dark. The hands climbed higher, gripping his calf, his knee, his belt. "Pull," Harold shouted. They pulled. For 3 terrible seconds, Oliver was stretched between them and the cave. Then his shoulder dislocated with a wet pop. His scream became silent. Serena refused to let go. Daniel was shouting now, wordless, hauling with all his strength. Harold's face turned purple. Josh sobbed through clenched teeth. Maya felt something in her own back tear. Oliver's fingers slipped. Serena caught his wrist with both hands. For a moment, mother and child looked at each other over the lip of the abyss. Then Oliver's arm came away. Not torn off, not broken. It simply separated at the shoulder, as if his body had been assembled loosely, and the cave had found the seam. Serena fell backward, holding the arm. Oliver dropped. His body vanished into the red-dotted shaft. His scream continued long after he was gone, falling and falling, until it became Victor's laughter. Serena looked at the arm in her lap. The fingers twitched once. Then the shaft breathed upward, and the red lights went out. When they came back, Serena was gone. Only Oliver's arm remained. Daniel made a sound no human throat should make and threw himself toward the shaft. Harold caught him. Brendan helped. Daniel fought them with sudden insane strength, spitting, sobbing, clawing at the floor. "I heard her," he said. "She is down there. She is with him." "She is gone," Harold said. Daniel's eyes rolled toward him. "You do not know what gone means." Then the rock beneath Daniel's knees opened. It did not crack. It opened. The limestone parted like lips, revealing a red, wet seam underneath. Daniel dropped waist deep before anyone could react. He screamed and grabbed Harold's cane. Harold held on. Ruth grabbed Harold. Brendan grabbed Ruth. Maya saw Daniel's legs vanish into the living slit in the floor. She saw his hands claw at the stone, breaking nails, leaving blood. His face turned toward her, and in it she saw every cruel word he had ever spoken, every slammed door. Every night Serena had lain awake beside him, afraid to breathe too loudly. She saw that he knew all of it now. The cave had shown him himself, and that was the worst death it could offer. "Help me," he begged. The floor sucked him down another foot. Harold's cane cracked. Daniel screamed Serena's name. The cave closed over his chest, his neck, his chin. His mouth was the last thing visible. It kept screaming after the stone sealed shut. The sound moved under their feet, muffled but alive, following them for several minutes as they stumbled away. There were 6 left: Maya, Harold, Ruth, Brendan, Kara, and Josh. The passage beyond the shaft did not belong to the tourist route in any possible world. It was raw cave, tight and jagged, with no railings. Yet the green exit signs continued at every turn, mounted impossibly on wet stone, arrows shining downward. Some were old and rusted. Some looked brand new. Some were broken in half, but still glowing. The red emergency lights faded behind them until they were walking by the green signs alone. Every few minutes, they heard voices. Linda called from a side tunnel, asking if anyone had seen Paul. Oliver cried for his mother. Daniel begged from under the floor. Victor hummed softly somewhere ahead. No one answered. At last, they reached a round chamber with a low ceiling and a floor of pale sand. In the center stood a wooden kiosk with a glass display case, exactly like the one near the visitor center. Inside were souvenirs: snow globes, magnets, plastic helmets, postcards. The objects were covered with dust, except for 6 postcards laid neatly in a row. Each showed the face of one remaining tourist. Maya picked hers up with trembling fingers. The photograph showed her standing in the cave chamber, but she was much older. Her hair was white. Her eyes were milky. Her mouth hung open in a scream that had lasted years. Printed beneath the image were the words, "Maya Ellison, still on tour." Kara began laughing. It was a small, broken laugh at first, then a loud and awful one. She snatched up her postcard and tore it into pieces. The pieces did not fall. They fluttered upward, clinging to the ceiling like pale moths. "No," Kara said. "No, this is not real. People do not just vanish in tourist caves. There are cameras. There are guides. There are rescue teams." Josh held her arms. "Kara, breathe." She shoved him. "Do not tell me to breathe. I am trying to help. You are always trying. That is all you do. Try, apologize, shake, make me carry everything." Josh flinched as if struck. The cave whispered, "She was going to leave you tomorrow." Kara stopped laughing. Josh turned to her. "What?" She shook her head. "Do not listen." "She packed the blue bag already," Victor's voice said from the kiosk. "Under the bed." Josh's face crumpled. Kara's anger vanished. "Josh, I was scared. I did not know how to tell you." "Here is one way," Victor said. The glass display case exploded outward. Josh cried out as shards sliced his face. Blood ran over his glasses. Kara reached for him, but he staggered backward into a rack of postcards that had not been there before. The cards rustled. Hands emerged from them, flat and papery, grabbing Josh's jacket, his hair, his ears. He screamed and clawed at them, but more hands unfolded from every postcard, thousands of printed fingers gripping him with impossible strength. Kara threw herself at him, tearing cards away. For a second, Maya thought they might save him. Then the postcards opened like mouths. They pulled Josh flat, not down flat, his body compressed with a series of brittle snapping sounds. His chest folded inward, his limbs thinned. His screaming face stretched and whitened until it became glossy paper. Kara held his hand until the hand became ink between her fingers. A new postcard slid into the display case. It showed Josh smiling nervously beside a formation called the Angel's Comb. The caption read, "Wish you were here." Kara did not scream. She stared at the card. Then she walked calmly to the nearest exit sign and struck her head against it. Once, twice, Maya lunged, but Harold caught her shoulder. No. Kara struck the sign a third time. The green glass shattered. The broken arrow flickered, then sharpened into a jagged point. The sign bent forward like a hook and entered her throat. Her boots kicked against the sandy floor. Her hands fluttered at the metal. Blood ran black in the green light. The sign pulled her upward until her feet left the ground. For a moment, she hung there, pinned to the wall beneath the glowing word exit. Then the wall softened around her. It took her slowly. Stone flowed over her boots, her legs, her chest, her face. Her eyes remained visible longest, wide and furious, until the limestone sealed over them. There were 4 left. Maya vomited into the sand. Ruth knelt beside her and rubbed her back, murmuring nonsense comfort like a mother to a sick child. Harold stood with his broken cane in both hands. Brendan had moved to the kiosk and was staring at his postcard. "What does yours show?" Maya asked hoarsely. Brendan turned it over. The image showed a burned church. Smoke poured from the roof. In the doorway stood Brendan, not as he was now, but younger, wearing a priest's collar. Behind him, barely visible in the flames, was a small figure at a window. A child. Brendan closed his eyes. "I left him," he said. No one spoke. The fire spread too quickly. I thought the building was empty. I heard him only after I was outside. His voice was empty. I told people I tried to go back. I did not. The heat was too strong. I stood in the rain and listened to him call. The cave whispered with a child's voice, "Father Brendan." He dropped the postcard. "Do not answer," Harold said. "Father Brendan, it hurts." Brendan covered his ears. "Do not answer it," Harold repeated. But the child began to cry. The sound came from a tunnel beyond the kiosk, a small tunnel low to the ground, lit by a warm orange glow, unlike the red emergency lights or the green signs. It looked like firelight. Brendan walked toward it. Maya grabbed his sleeve. "No." He looked at her. His face was calm now, almost peaceful, and that frightened her more than panic. "There is no outside for me," he said. "That is not true." It has known me since before I came in. The child sobbed again from the tunnel. Brendan gently removed Maya's hand. Harold stepped in front of him. You go in there, you die. Brendan nodded, yes. Then he crawled into the low tunnel. Maya fell to her knees and watched the orange glow swallow him. His shoes disappeared last. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came the sound of a church bell, deep underground, ringing once, twice, 3 times. A man screamed in fire. After that, the glow went out. Ruth began to pray. Harold did not stop her. Maya looked at the remaining postcards. 1 for Ruth, 1 for Harold, 1 for her. Ruth showed her sitting alone on a stone bench, smiling gently, while something stood behind her with its hands on her shoulders. Harold's showed him in his police uniform, younger and stern, standing over a covered body in a wooded ditch. Maya did not ask. Harold saw her looking. Girl named Annabelle, he said. 17. Missing 3 weeks before we found her. I knew who did it. Ruth turned to him. Harry. He stared into the dark. We had a suspect, local businessman. Rich, friends in the right rooms. Evidence went missing. Witness changed his statement. I signed the report anyway. Ruth's face tightened. You never told me. No. Why? Harold looked suddenly very old. Because I chose my pension over a dead girl. From the tunnel behind them came the sound of leaves moving in wind. There were no leaves underground. A young woman's voice said, Inspector Finch. Harold closed his eyes. Ruth clutched his arm. Harry, no. The voice called again, closer. You said you would find me. Harold's jaw worked. I am sorry, he whispered. The cave answered in Victor's voice. Not to her. The sandy floor shifted. Something emerged at the edge of the chamber. It was covered in wet leaves and black earth, though there was no soil here. At first Maya thought it was a person crawling. Then it lifted its head. It was a young woman, or the remains of one, her hair full of roots, her skin gray-blue, her eyes clouded. Her throat bore a dark line. One arm bent the wrong way. She dragged herself forward, leaving a trail of grave mud across the pale sand. Ruth screamed into both hands. Harold stood motionless. The dead girl reached him and touched his shoe. Inspector, she whispered. Harold's broken cane fell from his hands. I am sorry, he said again. The corpse rose with a sudden jerk, like a puppet pulled upright. Her mouth opened far too wide, and from inside it came the voices of many other dead people, men and women and children, all speaking at once. Sorry is what men say when the grave is already filled. She took Harold by the face. Ruth tried to pull him away, but the corpse turned its clouded eyes on her and hissed. Ruth stumbled back. The dead girl kissed Harold on the mouth. His body stiffened. His eyes bulged. Maya heard liquid moving inside him, rushing upward. Mud poured from his nose. leaves pushed out between his teeth. Roots slid from under his eyelids, thin and white and searching. His skin darkened to the color of bruised fruit. Ruth threw herself at him, sobbing his name. Harold's chest split open, not with blood, but with earth. A mass of roots burst from him and plunged into the sandy floor. Harold folded inward around them, becoming smaller as the roots drank him. In seconds, he was only a collapsed coat, a helmet, and two shoes filling slowly with black mud. The dead girl sank back into the floor. The leaves vanished. Ruth knelt beside Harold's empty coat and made a sound that seemed too small for grief. Maya stood frozen. She could not think any more in a straight line. The cave had stripped time down to breath, terror, and the next impossible thing. The world above seemed like a story someone had told her long ago. Sunlight, phones, traffic, students shouting in a playground, tea cooling on a desk, a ring in a box. Ruth picked up Harold's helmet and held it to her chest. "We have to go," Maya whispered. Ruth looked at her with wet eyes. "Where, love?" Maya had no answer. Every exit sign in the chamber pointed to one narrow passage behind the kiosk. The passage sloped downward. From within came a soft golden glow, like lights in a visitor center after closing. Maya took Ruth's hand. They walked. The passage was long and smooth, not natural. The walls were covered in framed photographs. Tour groups, hundreds of them, thousands, old black and white photographs at first, then faded color prints, then glossy modern images. In every picture, tourists stood smiling near the cave entrance. Families, school groups, couples, elderly hikers, children with plastic helmets. And in every photograph, Victor stood among them, sometimes young, sometimes old, sometimes wearing a miner's cap, sometimes dressed as a ranger from another century, sometimes standing in the background where no guide should have been. Maya stopped before one photograph, dated 1974. Victor stood beside a group of missing school children whose story she vaguely remembered from some documentary. 9 children and 1 teacher had vanished during a cave visit after a sudden power failure. Their disappearance had helped make St. Oran's famous in a grim way, though the official story blamed an unmapped passage and a rockfall. In the photograph, the children smiled. Behind them, every exit sign pointed inward. Ruth tugged weakly at Maya's hand. "Do not look." But Maya looked. She found photographs from 1932, 1908, 1891, then sketches, then oil portraits, then cave paintings. Figures with torches stood before a black mouth in the mountain. Beside them was a tall shape with long hands and antlers made of dripping stone. Victor had never been the guide. He was what the guide was for. The passage opened into a final chamber. It was enormous, larger than the cathedral chamber, larger than any cave could be beneath that mountain. Its ceiling was lost in darkness. Its walls curved inward like the inside of a throat. Thousands of exit signs covered every surface, nailed one over another, glowing green, flickering, buzzing softly. Every arrow pointed down to the center. At the center stood a tour group. Not people, shapes. They were made of limestone, but not fully stone. Faces pushed out of them. Hands, teeth, eyes that blinked slowly beneath mineral film. They stood in rows, fused shoulder to shoulder, all wearing rusted helmets and name badges from different decades. A path led between them. At the far end stood Victor Hale. He was smiling. His uniform was clean. His silver hair was neatly combed. His name badge was whole again. 2 remaining, he said warmly. You have done very well. Ruth squeezed Maya's hand, so hard it hurt. What are you? Maya asked. Victor looked pleased by the question. A guide. No. Yes, he said. That is all anything terrible ever needs to be. A guide, a door, a sign, a voice saying this way. The fused tourists whispered around them. This way. Victor extended his hand. The cave is old, older than your towns, older than your graves, older than the first frightened thing that crawled into darkness looking for shelter. It learned hunger before it learned shape. Then men came with candles, and it learned names. Men came with guilt, and it learned flavor. Men came with signs, and it learned jokes. His smile widened. Exit, he said softly. The signs buzzed brighter. Ruth stepped forward suddenly and spat in his face. The spit struck his cheek and slid down slowly, darkening as it moved. Victor touched it with one finger. How brave, he said. Ruth lifted Harold's helmet and swung it at him. For one glorious second, it seemed to strike. The helmet connected with Victor's temple. His head snapped sideways. Then his face cracked. Not like bone, like plaster. Underneath was darkness, filled with teeth. Ruth turned to Maya. Run. Victor opened his mouth. His jaw descended to his chest. Inside his throat, Maya saw the entrance gate, the gift shop, the parking lot, the little girl in pink boots jumping into puddles. She saw the surface world as if viewed from the bottom of a well. Ruth shoved Maya hard. Maya stumbled backward. Long hands unfolded from Victor's sleeves and seized Ruth around the waist. She did not scream at first. She dug her heels into the stone and looked at Maya with fierce, shining eyes. Do not let it have your voice, Ruth said. Then Victor lifted her. The ceiling above opened into a circle of black muscle and stone. The fused tourists raised their faces. Ruth finally screamed as she was pulled upward, higher and higher, her lavender raincoat bright against the dark. The ceiling closed around her legs. Her scream became muffled. Her hands beat once against the stone. Then her face appeared among the others in the wall. Still alive, still aware. Her mouth moved, Run! Maya ran. She ran past the fused tourists, past the walls of exit signs, back into the photograph passage. Behind her, Victor laughed. The sound filled every tunnel. The cave shook with it. Green light strobed across the walls. Photographs fell from their frames. In each one, the smiling tourists turned their heads to watch her pass. Maya did not know where she was going. There was no up, no back, no route. There was only movement and terror, and Ruth's last warning burning in her mind. Do not let it have your voice. She reached the souvenir chamber. The postcards were gone. The kiosk glass was whole again. Behind the counter stood Linda, smiling with water streaming from her eyes. Would you like a magnet? Linda asked. Maya clamped both hands over her mouth and ran. She reached the shaft. Oliver's arm lay where it had fallen, fingers curled. From far below, Serena sang a lullaby. Maya did not look down. She crawled through a side crack barely wider than her shoulders. Stones scraped her cheeks. Her helmet snapped off and vanished behind her. She dragged herself on elbows and knees through mud and sharp rock. Something crawled above her, matching her pace on the other side of the ceiling. Maya, Victor called softly. You are going the wrong way. She bit her tongue to stop herself answering. Blood filled her mouth. The crack opened into the cathedral chamber. For one wild instant, hope struck her so hard she nearly sobbed. She recognized the huge ceiling, the organ pipe formations, the lower cavern filled with mist. The normal yellow lights were back on. The public path gleamed beyond the railing. The exit signs pointed the right way. Maya staggered to her feet. Ahead, around the bend, she heard voices. Living voices. Tourists. A guide explaining stalactites and stalagmites. She began to run toward them, waving her arms, trying to shout through her closed mouth. If she could reach them, if she could warn them without speaking, if she could make them understand. A group came into view. 12 tourists in clean helmets stood around a smiling guide. Maya stopped. One of the tourists was Maya Ellison. Not older, not wounded, not covered in mud and blood. The Maya with the camera stood exactly as she had at the beginning of the tour, smiling politely, not yet afraid. Daniel stood nearby, Serena behind him, Oliver with earbuds in, Kara and Josh, Harold and Ruth, Father Brendan, Paul and Linda, and Victor Hale stood before them, warm and charming, one hand raised toward the angel's comb. A stalactite holds tight to the ceiling, he said. A stalagmite might reach it one day. The clean Maya laughed softly. The real Maya tried to scream. No sound came out. Victor turned his head and looked directly at her across the chamber. His smile deepened. The lights went out. When they came back, Maya was no longer in the cathedral chamber. She was in a smaller tunnel, alone. Her hands were fused to the wall, up to the wrists. At first, she did not understand. She tugged gently, then harder. The stone held her like cooled wax. She opened her mouth to cry out and found it full of mineral. Not enough to choke her, enough to keep her quiet. The tunnel before her sloped downward. Green exit signs lined it, one after another, arrows pointing deeper. Hours passed, or days, or tour. Maya learned that time in the cave did not move. It circled. Sometimes she heard rescue teams. Their boots hurried past distant passages. Their radios crackled. They called names. Maya Ellison, Ruth Finch, Oliver Pike. Can anyone hear me? Maya tried to answer until her throat bled around the stone in her mouth. No one came. Sometimes she heard new tour groups, children laughing, couples whispering, Victor telling jokes, the lights going out, screams blooming in the dark. Sometimes people ran past her tunnel, a man with half his face missing, a woman carrying a baby made of rock, a teenage boy crawling on broken legs, begging for his mother. Maya tried to warn them with her eyes. Most did not see her. The ones who did were already too lost to understand. Little by little, the wall took more of her. First her wrists, then her forearms, then her shoulders. Mineral grew over her skin in thin, translucent layers. Her hair hardened strand by strand. Her tears left white tracks down her cheeks that became part of the stone. Hunger came and went. Thirst came and went. Sleep came in brief, awful flashes full of green arrows. One day or one year, Victor visited. He walked up the tunnel, carrying her camera. "Hello, Maya," he said. She stared at him with hatred that had outlived strength. "You were a good listener," he said. "That matters in a guide." He lifted the camera and showed her the screen. There was a photograph on it. Maya in the wall, eyes wide, mouth sealed, arms buried in limestone. Beneath the image, someone had typed a caption. "Still on tour." Victor crouched in front of her. "I have a question," he said. "When the next group comes, and they are frightened, and they need someone kind to tell them where to go, will you help me?" Maya strained against the stone. A sound forced itself from her sealed mouth. It was not a word. It was barely human. Victor leaned closer, delighted. The mineral in her mouth cracked. Her lips parted just enough for one whisper. "No." Victor's smile faded. For the first time, Maya saw irritation in his face. Not anger, not fear, something colder. The impatience of a thing that had waited centuries and disliked being refused. "No," he said. The cave around them shifted. The stone tightened around Maya's ribs. Pain bloomed white and endless. Victor stood. "Then we will wait." He walked away. Maya remained. More tour came. More lights failed. More signs turned inward. And eventually, after pain had stripped memory into fragments, after the names of her students faded, after her mother's face became only warmth and absence, after even her own voice seemed like something she had borrowed and lost, Maya heard a group approaching. They were laughing nervously. A young woman asked if the cave was safe. Victor answered, perfectly safe, provided no one wanders. The group rounded the bend. One of them, a boy of about 16, saw Maya in the wall. His laughter died. What is that? He asked. Victor turned. For a moment, he looked at Maya. The stone in her mouth softened. Not much, just enough. Maya tried to say run. She tried to say do not follow him. She tried to say the exit signs lie, and the cave is hungry, and the guide is not a man. But the cave had been patient. It had learned her tongue. The word that came out of Maya's mouth was not the one she meant. This way, she whispered. The boy smiled uncertainly, reassured by the sound of a human voice. Victor nodded with approval. The tour moved deeper, and the cave swallowed them whole. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed tonight's story, please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment for more. Good night.
Whispers of a love so true, painting dreams of me and you. And I'll hold you close in this moment.